Pretend to love me for 3 months, the billionaire said, as if he were asking for a cup of coffee instead of rewriting someone's life. Lily Harper blinked, still holding the broken ceramic handle of the mug she had just dropped. The quiet Manhattan cafe smelled like roasted espresso beans and cinnamon pastries, the kind of cozy neighborhood place where people wrote novels on laptops and forgot the outside world existed. Lily worked there most afternoons after finishing her shift at the small bookstore 2 blocks away. And until 10 seconds ago, the most dramatic thing that had happened that day was a customer asking for almond milk instead of oat. Now a man in a tailored navy coat was calmly offering her a proposal, so strange her brain struggled to keep up. Ethan Caldwell looked nothing like the loud, flashy millionaires people imagined. His voice was low, steady, almost thoughtful. Dark hair neatly combed. Watch that probably cost more than Lily's yearly rent. Posture straight like someone used to walking into rooms where everyone listened. But the thing that caught Lily off guard most was his expression. He wasn't joking. He wasn't flirting. He looked completely serious. Lily set the broken mug pieces down on the counter and wiped her hands on a dish towel. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, trying to figure out if she had heard him correctly. "Did you just ask me to pretend to be in love with you?" Ethan nodded once, calm as ever. Outside the cafe window, yellow taxis slid past on the wet street, tires hissing against pavement after a light afternoon rain. People hurried along the sidewalk carrying shopping bags and umbrellas, completely unaware that inside this tiny cafe, Lily Harper's ordinary Tuesday had just taken a sharp turn into something unbelievable. Ethan reached into the inside pocket of his coat and placed a sleek black business card on the counter. Lily glanced down at it. Caldwell Group. She didn't recognize the name immediately, but the weight of the thick paper and the quiet confidence in Ethan's posture told her everything she needed to know. This man lived in a different world than she did. A world of glass towers, private elevators, and meetings where decisions moved millions of dollars. Lily lived in a third-floor walk-up apartment with a radiator that clanged every night and a landlord who reminded her twice a week that her rent was 3 weeks late. "Look," Ethan continued, his voice still calm, as if he had rehearsed this speech many times before. "I know how this sounds, but I need someone who doesn't belong to my world." Lily let out a small laugh, surprised at herself. "Well, congratulations. You definitely found the right girl for that." Ethan studied her for a moment, almost like he was confirming a theory. The cafe's warm lights reflected softly against the window behind him, outlining his silhouette while the late afternoon sky outside faded toward evening. 3 months, he said. "You attend a few public events with me, pretend we're in a relationship, and when it's over, we both walk away." Lily crossed her arms, curiosity starting to replace the shock. "And why would I ever agree to something like that?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Because," he replied quietly, "I'm willing to pay you $100,000. The cafe suddenly felt very quiet. Lily stared at him, wondering if this moment was real or if she had somehow stepped into someone else's story. What she didn't know yet was that the strange proposal standing across the counter would change both of their lives, and that the one rule Ethan Caldwell believed he could control would be the very rule he would break first. For a long moment Lily Harper did not move. The number Ethan had just spoken echoed in her mind like a bell that refused to stop ringing. $100,000. It was the kind of number that only existed in movies or on the glowing screens of financial news playing in the background at the bookstore where she worked. It was not a number that belonged in her life. Lily slowly pulled out the stool behind the cafe counter and sat down, suddenly aware that her legs felt weak. Ethan Caldwell remained standing calmly on the other side, hands resting lightly on the polished wood surface as if this entire conversation were completely ordinary. The warm lights above them reflected off the glass pastry case, casting soft golden shapes across the room, while the evening crowd outside thickened along the sidewalks. "That is a lot of money for pretending to be someone's girlfriend," Lily said carefully. Ethan nodded slightly. "It is not just pretending," he replied. "You would attend several events with me. Charity galas, company, dinners, interviews with the press, public appearances where people will expect us to look convincing." Lily folded the dish towel slowly in her hands, buying herself time to think. Just an hour earlier, she had been mentally calculating whether she could stretch a bag of groceries across 3 more days until her next paycheck. Her landlord had taped a polite but firm reminder to her door that morning. If rent was not paid by the end of the week, the apartment would be listed again. She had read the note 3 times before leaving for work, trying not to panic. Now this stranger in an expensive coat was offering her a solution that felt almost unreal. "Why me?" she asked finally. Ethan did not answer immediately. Instead, he glanced briefly toward the cafe window where the city lights were beginning to glow across the wet pavement. "Because you spilled coffee on me and apologized 3 times before I even stood up," he said. Lily blinked. "That is your reason?" Ethan allowed the faintest hint of a smile. "Most people I meet already know who I am before we speak. They measure every word they say, every laugh, every gesture. It becomes exhausting." Lily stared at him for a moment, studying the quiet seriousness in his eyes. She realized that although his clothes and posture suggested enormous wealth, there was something else there too. Something almost tired. "So you want someone who does not care about your money," she said slowly. Ethan shook his head. "I want someone who does not even think about it." The words hung quietly between them. A barista machine hissed behind Lily as a co-worker prepared another drink for a customer at the far end of the counter. For a few seconds, the ordinary sounds of the cafe returned, grounding the strange conversation back in reality. Lily took a slow breath. "And after 3 months?" she asked. "We both returned to our normal lives," Ethan replied calmly. "No obligations. No expectations." Lily looked down again at the business card still resting on the counter. The letters Caldwell Group seemed to carry a strange weight now, like a door opening into a world she had never imagined stepping into. Outside, a city bus rolled past with a low rumble, headlights cutting through the evening drizzle. Lily Harper had always believed life changed slowly, one small step at a time. But as she sat there in the quiet corner cafe with Ethan Caldwell watching her patiently, she began to realize that sometimes change arrived all at once, disguised as the most unbelievable offer she had ever heard. The cafe closed an hour later, but Lily Harper was still thinking about the same question as she wiped down the last table and stacked the chairs. $100,000. The number sounded even stranger now that the rush of the moment had faded. Outside, Manhattan had shifted fully into evening. Streetlights reflected across damp pavement, and the distant hum of traffic drifted through the glass windows. Ethan Caldwell had not rushed her. After giving her his card, he had simply said, "Call me tomorrow if you decide yes," and then he had walked out into the rain as calmly as if he had only asked for directions. Lily finished locking the cafe door and stepped into the cool night air. Her apartment was only 4 blocks away, but tonight the walk felt different, like every step carried a new weight. The city smelled faintly of rain and food carts, and somewhere down the street a saxophone player was performing for a small group of pedestrians. Normally Lily loved moments like this. The ordinary rhythm of the city made her feel part of something alive. But tonight her mind was busy replaying the conversation again and again. By the time she climbed the narrow stairs to her 3rd-floor apartment, the old radiator had already begun its usual evening rattle. Lily tossed her bag onto the small kitchen table and stared at the landlord's note still taped to the door. "Rent due immediately." She peeled the paper down slowly and folded it once before setting it aside. The room was small but warm, filled with the quiet evidence of her life. A stack of books from the stores sat beside the couch. A thrift store lamp glowed softly in the corner. On the wall above her desk hung a simple photo of Lily and her mother taken years earlier at a beach in New Jersey. Lily sank into the chair and pulled out Ethan's business card again. Caldwell Group. Even after searching the name on her phone, she still had trouble believing it. Ethan Caldwell was not just wealthy. He was the chief executive officer of a technology investment company, worth billions of dollars. News articles described him as brilliant, private, and extremely influential in business circles. Photos showed him standing beside government leaders and industry executives. Lily looked at the picture on the screen and then remembered the quiet man who had stood inside the cafe, asking her to pretend to love him. The two versions did not quite match in her mind. She leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. 3 months. That was all he had asked for. 3 months of attending events, smiling for cameras, pretending to be part of a world she had never even visited. And when it ended, she would have enough money to pay her rent for years, maybe even return to school like she had once dreamed. Lily exhaled slowly and rubbed her temples. "This is insane," she murmured to the empty room. But the truth was, the offer was not the only thing she kept thinking about. It was the way Ethan had watched her with quiet attention, as if he genuinely believed she was the right person for something important. No one had looked at her like that in a long time. Lily reached for her phone, hesitated, then set it back down again. Outside her window, the city lights stretched endlessly into the distance, bright and restless. Somewhere out there, Ethan Caldwell was probably already back in his world of glass towers and private offices. Meanwhile, Lily Harper sat alone in her small apartment, holding a business card that felt like a key to a completely different life. And for the first time that night, she began to wonder if saying yes might not be as impossible as it had first sounded. The next morning arrived quietly, but Lily Harper barely slept. The small apartment was still dim when the first pale light crept through the window blinds, painting thin silver lines across the wooden floor. She had spent half the night staring at Ethan Caldwell's business card on her bedside table, turning the impossible offer over and over in her mind until exhaustion finally pulled her into a shallow sleep. When her alarm rang at 7, Lily reached for her phone before she was even fully awake. For several seconds, she simply stared at the screen, remembering everything from the night before. 3 months. $100,000. Pretend to be in love. The words still felt surreal, like dialogue from a movie. She had somehow stepped inside. Lily sat up slowly and glanced around her apartment. The chipped coffee mug on the kitchen counter. The stack of overdue bills beside the sink. The landlord's folded notice resting quietly on the table. The reality of her life had not changed overnight. But suddenly, there was a strange possibility sitting beside it. She stood, made a small pot of coffee, and leaned against the window while the city woke up outside. Morning commuters hurried along the sidewalks below, taxis honked impatiently at the corner, and a delivery truck backed slowly into the alley behind the building. The world moved forward exactly the same as it always did. Lily wrapped her hands around the warm mug and thought about Ethan again. Not the billionaire version she had read about online, standing beside politicians and business leaders, but the man in the café who had calmly offered her a role in his life, as if it were a business arrangement. There had been no arrogance in his voice, no hint of manipulation, only quiet certainty. That detail kept returning to her thoughts. Most people with money like that did not ask strangers for help. They hired professionals, assistants, public relations teams. Yet Ethan Caldwell had looked at her like she was the exact solution to a problem he had been trying to solve for a long time. Lily set the mug down and walked back to the small table where her phone rested. For a moment she hesitated again. Saying yes would change everything about the next 3 months of her life. She imagined standing beside Ethan at events filled with powerful people and bright camera flashes. She imagined reporters asking questions she did not know how to answer. She imagined accidentally saying the wrong thing and embarrassing him in front of an entire room. The thought made her nervous enough to laugh quietly to herself. "You are not even part of that world," she murmured. But then another thought followed just as quickly. Maybe that was exactly the point. Lily picked up the phone and stared at the number printed beneath Ethan's name on the card. Her thumb hovered over the screen for a few seconds before she finally pressed call. The line rang twice. Then his voice answered, calm and unmistakable even through the speaker. "Ethan Caldwell speaking." Lily took a slow breath. For a brief moment, she wondered if she was about to make the strangest decision of her life. Then she said the words before fear could stop her. "It is Lily Harper from the cafe yesterday," she said. There was a pause, then a quiet note of recognition in his voice. "I was hoping you would call." Lily looked out the window again at the bright New York morning spreading across the skyline. "I have a question before I give you my answer," she said carefully. "If I agree to this, what happens next?" "If you agree," Ethan Caldwell said on the other end of the phone, his voice calm and steady, "then the first thing that happens is we meet in person and discuss the rules." Lily leaned against the small kitchen table, listening carefully. Outside her window, the morning traffic had grown louder, the city fully awake now, but inside the apartment, everything felt strangely still. "Rules?" she asked. Ethan gave a quiet breath that almost sounded like amusement. "Yes. If we are going to convince the world that we are in a relationship, we need boundaries that protect both of us." Lily nodded, even though he could not see her. That sounded reasonable. At least more reasonable than the entire situation had sounded yesterday. "All right," she said slowly. "When do we meet?" There was a short pause before Ethan replied. Today, if that works for you. Lily blinked, surprised by the immediacy. Today. My schedule becomes very complicated tomorrow, he explained. There is a board meeting this afternoon, but I can make time before that. Lily glanced at the clock above the stove. It was only a little after 8 in the morning. Part of her wanted more time to think, but another part knew that if she waited too long, fear might talk her out of the opportunity completely. Where? She asked. My office, Ethan said. Caldwell Tower. Midtown. Lily almost laughed at the contrast between that address and the aging apartment building she stood in now. That sounds very official, she admitted. Ethan's voice softened slightly. I promise the meeting itself will not be intimidating. After the call ended, Lily stood quietly for a moment with the phone still in her hand. Then she looked around her apartment again. The chipped kitchen counter. The tiny living room that doubled as her reading space. The coat rack leaning slightly because one leg had been repaired with tape. For years Lily had built her life around making the most of small things. Smile. Miss Harper, she asked. Lily nodded. Yes. Mr. Caldwell is expecting you. This way, please. Lily followed her down the hallway until they reached a set of tall glass doors. The assistant opened them gently before stepping aside. You can go right in. Lily took a slow breath before walking forward. Ethan Caldwell was standing near the large windows at the far side of the office, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. From this height the city looked almost calm, the traffic far below reduced to slow-moving lines of color. When he heard her step inside, Ethan turned. He was dressed in a dark suit that looked effortlessly precise, but the same calm expression from the cafe remained on his face. Good morning, Lily, he said. Lily felt a little of her nervousness ease when she heard the familiarity in his voice. Good morning. Ethan gestured toward a seating area near the center of the room, where two chairs faced each other beside a low glass table. A thin folder rested there waiting. Please sit, he said. Lily took the seat carefully while Ethan sat across from her. For a moment neither of them spoke. The quiet office hummed softly with the distant sounds of the building. Then Ethan opened the folder and slid a few pages across the table toward her. These are the terms of our arrangement, he explained. Lily glanced down at the neatly printed document. You were serious about the rules. Ethan nodded once. They protect both of us. Lily began reading slowly while he spoke. The agreement lasts for 3 months, Ethan said. During that time you will accompany me to several public events. Charity dinners, company gatherings, and a few interviews with media outlets. Lily looked up briefly. And we are supposed to look like we are actually dating. Yes, Ethan replied simply. Lily returned to the page. The rules were straightforward but precise. No discussion of the arrangement with anyone outside a small legal team. No public disagreements that could attract attention. Maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship during events. Lily noticed another line and raised an eyebrow slightly. No personal obligations after the 3 months end. Ethan leaned back slightly in his chair. When the arrangement ends, you return to your life, and I return to mine. Lily looked at him carefully for a moment. And you are completely sure this will work? Ethan did not hesitate. Yes. His answer was calm, but firm. Lily studied his expression, searching for doubt, but she found none. Instead, she saw something unexpected behind his confidence. A quiet hope that this unusual plan might finally solve whatever problem had brought him to the cafe yesterday. Lily slowly set the papers back on the table. You know, she said thoughtfully, this might be the strangest meeting I have ever had. Ethan's mouth curved into a faint smile. It is the strangest one I have had this week as well. Lily let out a small laugh before looking down at the document again. 3 months. $100,000. A pretend relationship with a man whose life was completely different from hers. She reached for the pen resting beside the folder. For a brief second she hesitated. Then Lily Harper signed her name. The sound of the pen touching paper was surprisingly quiet, yet the moment felt far louder in Lily Harper's mind. For a second after signing the document, she stared at her name on the page as if it belonged to someone else. Ethan Caldwell watched calmly from across the glass table, his expression steady but thoughtful. When Lily slid the document back toward him, Ethan closed the folder with careful precision, as if sealing a decision that had already begun changing both of their lives. Then we begin immediately, he said. Lily blinked slightly. Immediately? Ethan nodded. Our first appearance is tonight. Lily straightened in her chair. Tonight. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Ethan's mouth, almost apologetic. A charity dinner hosted by the Caldwell Foundation. Several members of the press will be there, along with business partners and investors. It is the perfect place to introduce you. Lily let out a soft breath, suddenly aware that everything was moving much faster than she expected. I thought maybe there would be preparation. Ethan leaned forward slightly, resting his hands together. There will be. In fact, it begins now. Almost as if on cue, the office doors opened, and the same assistant Lily had seen earlier stepped inside carrying a tablet. Mr. Caldwell, the stylist team has arrived, she said politely. Lily turned her head in surprise. Stylist team. Ethan gave a small nod toward the door. If the world is going to believe we are together, we must make sure you feel comfortable in that world. Lily stood slowly as two more people entered behind the assistant, both carrying garment bags and cases filled with makeup supplies. The sudden activity in the room made her feel like she had stepped behind the scenes of a television show. One of the stylists offered a warm smile. Miss Harper, we are here to help you get ready for tonight. Lily glanced at Ethan with a mixture of disbelief and nervous amusement. This really is happening, is it not? Ethan's voice remained calm, but sincere. Yes, but remember something important. Lily looked back at him. Ethan continued, you do not need to pretend to be someone else. Just be yourself. That is exactly why I chose you. The words surprised her more than anything else he had said that day. Lily had expected instructions about posture, etiquette, maybe even how to speak in front of cameras. Instead, Ethan seemed confident that the person she already was would somehow fit into his world. The stylist gently guided Lily toward a nearby room while discussing colors and fabrics for the evening event. As she walked away, Lily glanced back once more toward Ethan standing beside the tall windows overlooking the city. From this height, Manhattan stretched endlessly into the distance, full of noise, ambition, and bright lights waiting for night to fall. In just a few hours, Lily Harper would walk into that world beside one of the most powerful men in the room, smiling for cameras and pretending their relationship was real. What she did not realize yet was that somewhere between the contract she had signed and the moment those cameras flashed, the line between pretending and truth would slowly begin to disappear. By the time evening settled over Manhattan, the city had transformed into a river of golden lights reflecting against the glass towers of Midtown. Lily Harper stood in front of a tall mirror inside the private dressing suite at Caldwell Tower, barely recognizing the reflection staring back at her. The stylist team had worked with quiet efficiency for hours, adjusting her hair, choosing a deep navy evening dress that felt elegant but not overwhelming, and guiding her through small details she had never considered before. When Lily moved, the fabric caught the light softly, and for a moment, she simply stared at herself in disbelief. You look wonderful, one of the stylists said with a reassuring smile. Lily let out a quiet breath. I feel like I borrowed someone else's life for the night. The stylist chuckled gently while stepping aside. Moments later, the door opened and Ethan Caldwell entered the room. He paused just inside the doorway when he saw her. For a brief second, the confident billionaire who had negotiated billion-dollar investments looked completely still. Lily noticed the reaction and felt a sudden wave of nervousness. Is it too much? She asked. Ethan shook his head slowly, the faintest smile appearing again. No, he said. It is exactly right. His voice carried the same calm tone she had heard since yesterday, but there was something warmer beneath it now. Ethan stepped closer and offered his arm with quiet politeness. The car is waiting downstairs. Lily nodded and followed him through the quiet hallway toward the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of both of them reflected in the polished steel surface. Ethan looked composed and confident as always, but Lily could not help noticing how natural it looked standing beside him. The elevator descended smoothly toward the lobby, and within minutes they stepped outside where a sleek black car waited along the curb. The driver opened the door as the city buzzed around them with the energy of evening traffic and bright theater lights glowing a few blocks away. During the drive, Ethan briefly explained the event. The Caldwell Foundation supports several education programs across the country, he said. Tonight is our annual fundraising dinner. Lily listened carefully while watching the lights of Manhattan glide past the window. And everyone there already knows who you are, she said. Ethan nodded. Most of them do. Lily gave a small, nervous laugh. Then they will probably wonder who I am. Ethan glanced toward her with a calm confidence that somehow steadied her nerves. That is the reason we are arriving together. The car turned into a circular driveway in front of a large hotel where bright lights illuminated the entrance. Several photographers and reporters stood near the red carpet entrance, cameras ready for arriving guests. Lily felt her heartbeat quicken. Remember, Ethan said gently as the car came to a stop. Just be yourself. The driver opened the door and the cool night air drifted inside. Ethan stepped out first and then turned to offer his hand. Lily placed her hand in his and stepped onto the red carpet beside him. Instantly, camera flashes lit the evening like bursts of lightning. Reporters called Ethan's name while curious eyes shifted toward the unfamiliar woman standing beside him. For the first time, Lily Harper truly understood that the world had just been introduced to her as the woman at Ethan Caldwell's side. And somewhere behind the flashes of cameras and polite smiles, a story had already begun to form that neither of them could completely control. The camera flashes continued for several seconds as Ethan Caldwell guided Lily Harper through the entrance of the grand ballroom. Inside, the atmosphere shifted from the noise of reporters to the soft elegance of a formal evening. Crystal chandeliers glowed above round tables dressed in white linen, and the quiet sound of a piano floated through the room while guests in tailored suits and evening gowns spoke in calm, polished voices. Lily felt the weight of hundreds of curious eyes as Ethan led her forward, but his presence beside her remained steady and reassuring. "You are doing well," he said quietly as they walked. Lily smiled faintly. "I am trying not to trip on this dress." Ethan gave a brief laugh, the sound soft but genuine. That alone would not ruin the evening. Several business leaders approached them almost immediately, greeting Ethan with warm familiarity. Each introduction followed a similar pattern. Ethan would shake a hand, exchange a few calm words about the foundation or the event, and then gesture toward Lily. "This is Lily Harper," he said more than once that evening. The name sounded strange to her in that room, as if it belonged to a slightly different version of herself. Yet with every conversation, she felt her confidence growing. She spoke politely, listened carefully, and answered questions with the same honest tone she used every day at the bookstore. No one seemed to doubt that she belonged beside Ethan. During dinner, Lily noticed how naturally Ethan treated her. He did not dominate conversations or draw attention to their arrangement. Instead, he included her in small moments, asking what she thought about a guest's project or quietly explaining the purpose behind the foundation's work. At one point, a server accidentally spilled a small amount of water while refilling glasses at the table. The young man looked embarrassed and began apologizing quickly, but before anyone else reacted, Lily stood and offered him a napkin with a warm smile. "It happens," she said gently. The moment lasted only a few seconds, yet Ethan noticed it immediately. While the conversation around them continued, he watched Lily for a moment longer than necessary. Something about the simple kindness of that gesture stayed with him in a way he did not expect. Later that evening, Ethan stepped onto the stage to give a short speech about the Foundation's programs supporting education across the country. As the audience listened, Lily sat quietly at the table watching him. In the bright stage light, Ethan appeared confident and composed, the same powerful leader described in countless business articles. Yet now Lily also saw the quieter side she had noticed in the café. The man who spoke carefully and chose his words with thoughtfulness rather than arrogance. When the speech ended, the room filled with applause. Ethan returned to the table and leaned slightly closer to Lily. "Thank you for being here tonight," he said. Lily smiled softly. "It is part of the agreement, remember?" Ethan nodded, but his expression carried a hint of something more thoughtful. The contract they had signed that morning still defined their arrangement. Yet as the evening continued and the cameras captured them smiling together across the ballroom, Ethan Caldwell felt a quiet realization forming in the back of his mind. Somewhere between the moment Lily Harper stepped onto the red carpet and the simple kindness she showed a nervous server at dinner, the carefully controlled plan he had created was already beginning to change in ways he had not expected.